Happy New Year, everybody! Whoa! 2021 at last! Thanking you! Unbelievable. Oh, still got me sunnies on. There, that's better. Welcome to our live stream, our first one for 2021. And thank you again for watching. You've been absolutely sensational over the last few weeks. Our ratings have gone up. We're just about to take over Channel 9 now, I think. Anyway, getting to the more important thing of live streaming, we are here as Property Investment Advisory. I am Roger. If you're just joining us for the first time, we haven't found Scott yet for 2021. Hopefully he's still around. But enjoy yourself anyway, and we'll look forward to running through some special treats for you tonight. We have got something that's going to follow on from last year. We've got Are You Finance Ready, which will cover you off from Are You Property Investment Ready, which we ran just before Christmas actually. So what we want to be doing is giving you a little information session on that, as well as we're going to be running some Q&A at the end of it so that you can ask your questions. There might be some questions coming in throughout it. That's great. We'll get to as many as we can. And if not, don't worry. We'll still get to your questions over the next couple of weeks. Okay. So more than importantly is please don't think your question is too stupid. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And we want you to ask it anyway, because if you think it's a silly question, you don't ask it, somebody else may not get the answer for it, which is not fair to them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to come up and talk to you about is, are you looking to invest or owner-occupy? What some of the differences are. It sounds like a simple one, but this is really about something that's very critical, because especially if you're living at home, I'm going to buy a house, what are you going to buy it for? For you to live in? Better to stay at mum and dad's perhaps and invest, or live where you want, rent where you want, and then invest where they're just smart to invest. But what are some of the differences? Well, okay, from a lending perspective, a bank will lend you a lot more to invest than it will to buy your own home, because once you buy your own home, there's nobody renting it for you. You're owning it. You're living in it. There's no advantages from the government. There's no negative gearing, for example, advantages that you can get from the government. So it's all over onto you. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about now, so be aware of what you can when it comes to how you're buying the house, whether it's owner-occupied or investment. Make sure that you've got a clear understanding of what you're going to do, and be prepared to talk to people before you make that step, because it could be inhibiting for you not to make the right one. Let's talk about a deposit now, because this is quite often misunderstood. And even though it sounds simple, it can be sometimes misconstrued by people who don't know. Typically for investment, you will need at least a 10% deposit. So you've got to either save that, borrow it, or have somebody guarantor it for you, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There's also a thing called mortgage insurance. It doesn't insure you, forget that. It insures the bank from the insurance company. They come looking for you. But we want to make sure that if you've got no mortgage insurance to pay, but you have to have a 20% deposit, not a 10% deposit, a 20% deposit. However, some things that people aren't quite aware of is that with mortgage insurance, you can claim that back with over the next 5 years through your tax. Okay, so there's some of the things that you need to be understanding when it comes to a deposit. So for all means, get your deposit, beg, borrow, or steal how you can get in. The sooner you start this journey, the better off you'll be over life. Okay, the first thing that banks are going to want to look at is serviceability. So what they're going to be talking about is, they're going to say, all right, can you afford, in our eyes, to look after this loan? And they will have a 20% variant amongst different lenders, either banking institutions or private banks or building societies, whatever. They will have about a 20% variant as what they choose as their serviceability on you being able to borrow for that investment property. So what are some of the things that you need to know before you get there? Well, you need to know, what they will want to know is, okay, well, how many kids have you got? How many loans have you got? Do you have a credit card? Do you have a personal loan? Do you have other money that you've forgotten a credit card that you might, like a Go card for something, which is something not everybody thinks of as a credit card. They'll want to know all of that. They'll also want to know how you're employed. And what I mean by that is that if your income is a permanent employee, then as long as you're out of probation, the bank will accept that as income. If you work most of your money through overtime, etc., then there'll be differences in how they look at that income. Also, when it comes to being a casual, being a self-employed, or even being a contract worker, you will need at least a couple of years of actual history behind you with financials, July to June, before the banks will take it as actual income. So these are some of the things you need to know. How much do you need to borrow? Well, it depends on the property you want to buy. So get some advice on that, because different areas, different structures, different types of properties will cost a different amount. But make sure that even though you can borrow perhaps $1 million, do you really want to spend $1 million on an investment? Or maybe buy 2 investments instead. Would that be a wiser option? And the other thing that the banks will look at really strictly and hardly today is that how good have you been in the past? If you had a credit card, have you been paying that on time? If you've got a personal loan, have you been paying that on time? If you've already got a mortgage, are your last 6 months of your statement up to date and being paid on time? Otherwise, they might look at you disfavourably and or increase a rate. Okay, let's go to a bit more complexity now and start to talk about things such as your options that are out there. What are your options? Well, a bank's going to want to know with an investment property, do you want to be paying? Do you want to have it as a fixed or as a variable loan? And what's the difference to you? A fixed rate means that for the period of the fix, which can be anything from 1 to 5 to 10 years, that the rate won't change. You lock in a rate, but you might pay a higher price for doing that. But you'll have certainty knowing what that rate is going to be. If it's a variable loan, there'll be less certainty, but it'll be more flexible to get in and out of without penalty. The next part is look, okay, how to structure the loan so that you're in control of the investment. And this is something that you need to talk to about an investment type lender, the broker or a bank that's had an understanding and experience in actual lending to people who are buying investment properties, because the people that don't can often get upset up the wrong way. The difference in lending institutions is also a really big one. There's banks, there's non-banks, and there's different types of, there's even money lenders that are out there. So before you actually borrow, make sure you're borrowing off somebody or an institution that is good with investment lenders. Not all are. Just because they've been really nice and they're happy with you going into the location, be aware that the CEO of the best building society or bank or whatever in the world loves you just as much as the one that you don't want to go with. So be very sure that you are, in fact, with an investment lender that can help you into the future. What sorts of options do you have? Who can you go to? Well, you can go to a bank. What's their limitation is that they can only give you products that they have to sell you. So they can only give you what there is in their shop. A mortgage broker can give you any type of lender that is out there that is in their aggregator pool. What I mean by that is that not all of them, not all the brokers can offer all different services. So you need to make sure that you've got that flexibility or that ability to choose. Are there salary packaging options at your job? This is a big one. If you're in education, if you're sometimes in some of the forces, they have what they call salary packaging. Now, salary packaging means that pre-tax money can be allowed for you to use in an expense account. You can put money pre-tax into your home loan, into car loans, or even for salary packaging into your superannuation. If you haven't got it or you're eligible for it but you're not aware of, it's a really good thing to be able to find out, because it can make a big difference as to what you can service as far as a loan is concerned. More importantly, once you've got a loan, how quickly you can pay that debt down and set yourself up for further investments. So paying the loan back on principal and interest, or paying it on interest only, which way should you go? I've got a different rule of thumb for this, but if you've got it's your only investment or your only owner-occupied property, you probably want to be paying that debt down so that you're freeing up equity over time. If it's your own, if it's have an owner-occupied home and you're looking to purchase an investment, then potentially leave the investment as interest only and concentrate on paying the owner-occupied property down. But that's just a rule of thumb. It's not be all and end all, and certainly talk to your institutions to get the accurate information there. The ownership breakdown. Well, okay, so the difference again between owner-occupied and individual investments is the fact that with an owner-occupied, it's typically as a 50-50 type investment. In other words, you and the other party are 50% owners. With investment, that structure can be changed from anywhere from 50-50 to 100 and 0. In other words, 99-1, 80-20, whatever the percentage is that is best for your individual situation. What we found is that is best to talk to an accountant about and the institution to make sure that it works best, because it will not only affect your tax scenario now, but it'll affect the capital gains you pay when and if you sell the property down the track. Alrighty, so some of the state and federal subsidies and grants that are around, especially with COVID, have been unbelievable. I think it was 25,000 last year up until the end of the year, and this year it's still 15 for your federal incentives. For your state ones, 10 in New South, Queensland's got 15k, and some of the builders are really throwing some money around to help attract people to their building company rather than you to go next door. But what you want to make sure is that I've lost where I'm going. I've got nobody here to help me. Oh, poor Roger. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are looking for, with the grants, we want to get help from our lenders. Sorry about that little bit of a brain fade that I had. But we want to make sure that the institutions are helping you fill out the paperwork, because it's not easy. It is more difficult. How do you access through them? Make sure that they've got an ability to do that. If they don't, then maybe that's not the lender for you. Really get some help on that. What type of property should I be looking for? Well, what types are out there, first of all? Obviously you've got your house and land, you've got your houses, established houses, you've got townhouses, you've got flats, you've got units. What's best for you and what is important when selecting it? First of all, you can only buy what you can borrow. So if you can't borrow it, there's no point looking at it. There's no point looking at $1 million property if you can only afford to lend 600,000. Also, you've got to consider the ongoing costs. If there's ongoing costs such as strata fees or other types of fees, or fees for mowing lawns that are charged to that property, then you need to be aware of those costs and obtain the location. Location, as they say to real estate, location is very, very important. Location, location, location. You need to be with people who understand how to get you that location and advice, and also how to make sure that what the infrastructure and government spending in the area is, it's going to really drive that property price in value, because it's going to be in demand for that area. So that should be a key, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't invest because you can't get the property type. Location rules. The other thing is that rent controlled. Some of the things that in relation to rent controlled are in fact because of the fact that the tenants want control of the property via something like a DHA. DHA is term for defence housing. The defence housing is something whereby they will guarantee the tenant for the owner, whether there's a rent coming in or not, the owner will be given the same amount of rent each week, but they'll pay almost double the price for doing that. I'm not here to flog DHA, but it's just an important note to note that you need to make sure of what you are getting into as far as the property management is concerned. And things like military housing, that can be great, but it needs to suit your purpose. Now here's one for you. How many people should be on the loan? Now I've got families that have got 2 brothers, siblings, etc., whereby they want to start their investment thing because mum and dad have and they're clients of mine, and that's great. So you can actually help you get in there, because both incomes can service the loan, and you can actually only have to have half the deposit required each, which is really good for you because it means you can start. And like I said before, starting is absolute key. So that can be great, but with caution, you should also know that of when you're going to get out of this. So this is a starter thing to get the ball rolling, and you're going to pay it down really quickly together. That's a great idea, because then you could look to keep that and leverage off it. Or if you decide to sell it, have some sort of an agreement, whether it's a written one or whether it's a legal one, to get you out at the other end safely and calmly. So it can be up to 4 people. With most lenders, will allow 4 people on a loan. So you could even have 4 mates, 4 whatever, but just have a look at that, the end goal as well. What impact will that have on me? If I have to sell in the short term, that could be negative. But if it could also help me get into a property that I might want to get into myself in addition. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is why we're looking at getting into properties and how to get into them the best and quickest way for you. If it came to the point where you needed help, or let's just say for the first time in life you've got income but you haven't got anything saved. You might have come from uni, you might have been in an apprenticeship, you might have just come out of your time and done some licensing which kicks your income up a hitch. You might be a doctor that's now going out on your own and your income's double, whatever, but you still haven't got the deposit because you might be paying a HECS debt, whatever the reason is. You can look to things such as guarantors. And the guarantors are becoming a bigger and bigger player, especially with the young people. Why is that? And what is the role of a guarantor? Which is a great question. The role of a guarantor is to guarantor a loan. So that if a bank said, well, you've got no deposit, Mr. Price, so therefore, how are you going to be able to, what are we going to get back as to cover our risk if we haven't got anything to grab onto? So what a guarantor will do will offer some of their equity in the property that they own to enable you to be able to use that as your deposit. They guarantee that that loan will be paid into the future. Okay, so what that means for you is that you get that loan guarantored. You're 100% guarantor or owner of the loan against the actual property itself. And if you paid that loan down quickly, or if the property that you own goes up in value, what you're going to find is that that you'll be able to take that equity away from your parents onto your own property and free your parents up in that example. There's also another way that parents or friends or family can help you. They can lend you some part or all of the deposit, or they can get a loan in their own name against their own asset and have you pay that loan back as a gentleman's agreement, if you like. So there's a number of different ways to skin the same cat, but the whole point is that how quickly can you get into a market, especially a market such as today that could move fairly quickly into the future. Can we get on there earlier, or do we sit there and go, what if, what it could have been? Let's look at those sort of options and make sure that you've got good advice right along the board. If you don't know, ask. So what we're going to do now is, I hope that's given you some good insight about how to be finance ready. So what I'm going to do now is in the year 2021 is have a look at some questions that have come to us on our live feed. So one of the things that in regards to guarantors is I've got a question here from John of Mayfield, and John's asked, how long does a guarantor have to be a guarantor on my investment loan? And look, John, I sort of touched on that before. The answer to that is as long as that loan is open or until it's taken over by you, by either your equity, or it's paid down to $0. So as far as the time frame is concerned, it's really a condition of those two different options. Hopefully that helps you, John. So this is Sally from Singleton. I wonder whether we're going to get a Wendy from Windsor next anyway. Just the letters are rhyming. I'm sorry, bit of Roger humour there. Can a broker get me a better interest rate than a bank will offer me? the answer to that question is really, well, how long is a piece of string? Sometimes a broker, especially if they've done a lot of lending with that particular bank or building society or non-bank, can get you a better rate because of their own personal power. Like they might have a book of $15 million that they've done, for example. But it is on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes banks can give you a better rate than brokers do because they've got direct pull within the bank, and usually for the same sort of reason, because they may have a higher turnover. The question you want to ask is, if you are with a particular lender and the broker offers you a certain rate, ask your bank whether they'll match that or beat that. You'll be surprised at what they can do. Just because they advertise a rate doesn't mean that they can't get you a better one. And that's something that's really key. All right, so here we got Scott from Wyong. So it looks like Wendy didn't have an answer for that question. But anyway, so we're going to ask the question. Wendy wants to know, Scott wants to know, can you get out of a DHA agreement easily? And look, Scott, I keep going saying Wendy. Scott, I understand you're not Wendy. You are Scott, in fact. Scott, so the answer to that is that what terms that the DHA agreement is on, that they vary and they change over time. Typically, they can be 3, 6, 9 year timeframes. And sometimes they can only be if on a brand new property or property up to 9 years old, and that can change. And some of those rules may have changed since I've become aware. But not hard to get out of it. You can change a property management agreement at any point in time with any property manager, including Defence Housing. However, there may be stipulations depending on what that is. So just be making sure that you are aware of those going into them rather than when you want to change it. All right, that looks like all the questions that we have at the moment. Thank you very much for joining. Keep it coming. Keep our ratings going through the roof. It's been spectacular, the response we've had. Remember, 2021 is going to be a brilliant year. Start off the right way. Get into your investments. Ask your questions first. Get into your questions. If you want to talk to us, call on the numbers that are on our website. You've also got access to be able to email us. You can talk to us in any different format that's together in 2021. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll look forward to catching up with you in a couple of weeks' time with our next live stream. Thank you very much.